I was serving dinner to my in-laws, my hands still sore from working a double shift, when my father-in-law took a bite and said, "Did you learn to cook in prison?" My mother-in-law added, "No wonder he eats out so much." My husband just laughed along. That night, I found receipts for dinner dates, 2 people, Candlelit restaurants, all while I was home with a frozen pizza and their dirty dishes. Hey, everyone. I've been sitting on this story for a while. I guess it's time to tell it. I live in a town about 30 minutes outside of Wichita, Kansas. Nothing fancy. One Walmart. A few gas stations. The kind of town where everybody knows who's screwing who before their own spouses do.
I'm 34.
My husband, Mark, is 37. We met at a 4th of July cookout years ago. He made me laugh. Back then, that was enough. Fast forward 6 years, and I'm working my ass off. I work full-time at a hospital as a nurse's aide. It's not glamorous. It's lifting, cleaning, bending, running. I come home smelling like bleach and old sweat most days. That week, I picked up 2 extra shifts. Mark said we needed the money if we wanted to finally get that down payment saved up. So I worked. I worked until my legs cramped in the car ride home. The night it all started, I came home after a 14-hour shift. Mark was waiting on the porch, beer in hand, talking to his buddy. As soon as he saw me, he waved and shouted, "Hey babe, my parents are coming for dinner. You got something you can whip up?" I stared at him. I thought he was joking. But he just smiled and went back to his beer. I should have said no. I should have told him to make his own damn dinner. But that's not how I was raised. I went inside, thawed some ground beef, found a bag of potatoes and started peeling. My hands were so stiff I dropped the peeler twice. By the time his parents pulled up, I had dinner on the table. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can, and store-bought rolls. They came in like they owned the place. His dad, Ray, plopped down and asked for a beer before he even said hello. His mom, Diane, made a face like she just smelled a dead cat. I smiled. I served them. I sat down last. Ray took one bite, looked right at me, and said, "What did you do? Learn to cook in prison?" Diane snorted and said, "No wonder Mark eats out all the time." Mark? Mark laughed. Hard. Slapped the table even. I froze. My hands clenched in my lap, so tight my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But instead, I smiled and kept eating. After dinner, they didn't offer to help clean up. Of course not. They sat on the couch, flipping through their phones while I washed every plate, every greasy pan, every damn fork. When they finally left, Mark gave me a slap on the butt and said, "See? That wasn't so bad." He cracked open another beer and planted himself in front of the TV. I stood there in the kitchen, looking at the mess they left behind, the crumbs on the floor, the smudges on the table, the dirty towels, and I just snapped inside. Not loud, not screaming, just broke. I sat down at the table and stared at nothing for a while. Then I saw his wallet sitting there, right next to the salt shaker. I don't know what got into me. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was something deeper. But I reached over and picked it up. It was fat. Real fat. I opened it. Credit card receipts spilled out. I started looking. Restaurant after restaurant. Nice ones. The kind you make a reservation for. The kind where the entrees cost more than my entire grocery budget for a week. The Belmont.
Café Provence. Vora.
Places with dim lighting, heavy wine lists, and white tablecloths. Each receipt told a story. 2 dinners. 2 desserts. 1 bottle of wine. Signed with Mark's messy scrawl. Dates that lined up perfectly with nights he said he had to work late or grab a beer with the guys. I sat there, tracing the dates with my finger. March 3rd, April 10th, May 22nd. I remembered those nights. Sitting at home with a frozen pizza, waiting for him to come home smelling like whiskey and smoke. My stomach twisted. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I set the wallet down. I washed my face. I climbed into bed next to him. He was already snoring, beer breath rolling off him in waves. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. I didn't confront him the next day. Or the next. Or the next. Instead, I started planning. Quietly. Patiently. Because when you live in a town like mine, revenge isn't loud. It's slow. It's steady. It's final. And Mark had no idea what was coming for him. I didn't change anything at first. I still made dinner. I still smiled. I still laughed when he told his stupid jokes. But inside, I was cold. Dead cold. The first thing I did was get my own bank account. I went to the small credit union across town. Opened it under my maiden name. Told them I needed it for personal savings. They didn't ask questions. Small towns don't. Every paycheck after that, I started skimming. A little here, a little there. $20, $50, whatever I thought he wouldn't notice. I told him the hospital cut my hours. He didn't even look up from his phone. The second thing I did was start keeping records. Every receipt I found, I took pictures of. Every weird charge on our bank statement I printed out. I even started following him a few times. Borrowed my friend Mandy's car, an old beat-up Corolla he wouldn't recognize, and tailed him after work. It didn't take long. 2 Thursdays later, I watched him pull into the Belmont parking lot. I parked across the street and waited. 15 minutes later, he came out, arm in arm with some woman. Blonde. Skinny. Wearing a dress that looked like it cost more than my whole closet. They laughed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. He kissed her before they got into his truck. Right there. Right out in the open. Like I didn't exist. The next morning, I acted normal. Made his coffee. Packed his lunch. Kissed him goodbye at the door. He smiled and said, "Thanks, babe. You're the best." I smiled right back. I even waved as he pulled out of the driveway. Later that day, I called a lawyer. Found one 3 towns over. Didn't want anyone local catching wind. I told her everything. The cheating. The financial stuff. The emotional abuse. She listened. Nodded. Then she smiled a cold, sharp smile and said, "You ready to destroy him?" I nodded. God help me, I nodded. We started gathering everything. Bank records. Receipts. Photos. Every little betrayal. In black and white. But I didn't file yet.
No.
I wanted it to hurt. And if I timed it right, it was going to hurt bad. Mark kept getting bolder. Staying out later. Coming home smelling like cheap perfume and beer. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. One night, he stumbled in after midnight, reeking of whiskey. I helped him out of his boots like I always did. I tucked him into bed. While he snored, I pulled his phone off the nightstand. No password. He thought I was too stupid to look. The messages were all there. Texts to Tina. Pictures. Dirty ones. Promises of vacations. Promises of moving in together. "Soon, baby," he wrote. "Just gotta get some stuff sorted out first." I sat there, reading every word. Felt like acid pouring down my throat. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to leave. Probably thought he could screw me over and walk away clean. Maybe he even thought I'd beg him to stay. Idiot. That night, I made the real plan. Step 1 was the house. The one we lived in was in his name, bought before we married. But there was another house. His dream project. A fixer-upper he bought cheap 2 years ago. We poured money into it, my money, mostly. Weekend after weekend, I scrubbed floors, painted walls, sanded cabinets.
But the deed?
The deed was in my name. He was too lazy to do the paperwork right. Said he'd get around to it. He never did. That house was legally mine. So I listed it. Quietly. Privately. Found a buyer through a friend at the hospital. Cash offer. Quick close. Signed the papers 2 weeks later. The check came straight to my secret account. $98,000. Every penny legally mine. Mark never noticed. He was too busy planning weekend trips with Tina. Step 2 was the setup. Mark's birthday was coming up. Big 4-0. He wanted a party. Lots of friends. Lots of drinking. I agreed. Told him he deserved it. Told him I'd make it special. I even booked a banquet room at a local bar he loved. Invited everyone, his buddies, his coworkers, his parents. Even Tina. I found her Facebook. Sent her a fake message from a dummy account. Mark wants you there. Big surprise coming. She replied with a bunch of heart emojis.
Perfect.
I spent the week acting like the perfect wife.
Cooking. Cleaning.
Laughing at his stupid jokes. He didn't suspect a thing. The night of the party, everything was ready. I wore a new dress. Did my hair. Looked better than I had in years. Mark drank like a fish. Tina showed up halfway through the night, wearing a skin-tight dress, hanging off him like a dog in heat. Everyone saw. Everyone. Whispers started. People stared. Mark didn't care. He was too drunk, too stupid, too full of himself. Right before the cake, I got up on the little stage by the DJ booth.
Tapped the mic.
Hey everyone, I said. Thanks for coming. I have a little surprise for the birthday boy. Mark grinned. Tina clapped like a seal. I pulled out a stack of papers. Held them up high. These, I said, are copies of the bank records, the receipts, the hotel bills, and the text messages between Mark and his girlfriend. Dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Happy birthday, you cheating piece of shit, I said. I tossed the papers into the crowd like confetti. People scrambled, grabbing them, reading them.
Gasps.
Laughter.
Shouts.
Ray and Diane just sat there, mouths hanging open. Mark stood up, red-faced, stumbling. You crazy bitch, he yelled. Tina grabbed her purse and bolted out the door. I smiled sweetly. By the way, Mark, I sold the renovation house. Money's already in my account. Good luck paying your lawyer with your bar tabs. His face crumbled right there, in front of everyone. I walked out, heels clicking on the floor, head high. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a little motel on the edge of town. Paid cash. Slept like a baby for the first time in months. Mark called me 23 times. Left voicemails. Texted. First he was angry. Then he was begging. Please, baby, we can work this out. It was just a mistake. Don't throw everything away. I turned my phone off and let it all rot in silence. Monday morning, I went down to the courthouse. Filed for divorce. In Kansas, adultery doesn't guarantee you anything extra in court, but it sure as hell doesn't help the cheater either. Especially when you've got a nice fat folder of proof. My lawyer filed for spousal support too. Mark made more money on paper. But with my proof, it looked real bad for him. Meanwhile, the house we lived in, the one in his name, was a different story. Normally, I wouldn't be entitled to it. But Mark wasn't too smart. Turns out, he had taken out a second mortgage on it without telling me. Used part of it to fund his business trips with Tina. Problem was, he'd used my income on the loan paperwork to qualify. That made me a cosigner. And that meant liability. It also meant leverage. My lawyer smiled when she explained it to me. He drags this divorce out. You can bankrupt him. Force a foreclosure if he can't refinance. I had him by the balls and he didn't even know it yet. Word spread fast around town. By Wednesday, everybody knew. I couldn't go into the grocery store without getting side-eyed sympathy looks. Tina?
Gone.
Disappeared. I heard through the grapevine she dumped him the night of the party and went back to her ex. Ray and Diane? Embarrassed. Humiliated. They didn't come around anymore.
Didn't call.
I guess I wasn't good enough for their son after all. Funny how that works. Mark showed up at the hospital one day, drunk. Tried to cause a scene in the parking lot. Yelling. Crying. Begging me to talk to him. Security escorted him off the property. My boss called me into her office, worried about my safety. I had to file a restraining order after that. I wasn't done, though. Because all those receipts, all those fancy dinners? Mark hadn't reported a dime of that money on our taxes. He thought paying cash made it invisible. It didn't. I filed an anonymous tip to the IRS. Turned over copies of every receipt. Let them do what they do best. By the end of the month, Mark had divorce papers, a pending foreclosure, a frozen bank account, thanks to unpaid taxes. A restraining order, no girlfriend, no parents speaking to him, and no clue what to do next. Meanwhile, I moved into a cute little rental house across town.
Bright. Clean. Quiet.
I bought a new bed, new dishes, new life.
No frozen pizzas.
No dirty dishes stacked up in the sink. Just peace. For the first time in 6 years, peace. A few weeks after I moved into the rental house, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the bank. Foreclosure proceedings had started on Mark's house. I smiled when I read it, but not a happy smile. A tired one. The kind you get when you realize payback never really feels as good as you think it will. I could have let it end there, but some part of me wasn't finished yet. I still had the receipts.
Still had the texts.
Still had all the dirt he tried to bury. I sent it all to his job. Anonymously. Big envelope, no return address. See, Mark worked at a car dealership. And dealerships don't like messy drama. Especially not managers getting drunk and screwing around with side pieces when they're supposed to be selling trucks. 3 days later, I heard through Mandy that Mark had been fired. No warning. No severance. Just walked out the door with a cardboard box. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt powerful. But I didn't. I felt empty. The truth was, I'd spent so long being angry. I didn't know what to feel now that he was actually suffering. Mark showed up at my door once after that. Middle of the day. Unshaven, dirty clothes, smelling like beer and old sweat. He looked like a ghost. He begged me, tears running down his face. Said he was sorry. Said he made a mistake. Said he loved me. I stood there for a long minute. Then I said, "You didn't just ruin us. You ruined yourself." I shut the door in his face. He sat on the porch for an hour before finally stumbling away. After that, I didn't see him again. I heard he moved in with some cousin out in Derby, picking up odd jobs, trying to pay off the IRS and the bank at the same time. He lost his truck. His credit got trashed. The house got sold at auction for half what it was worth. Ray and Diane stopped going to church.
Too ashamed.
Tina moved on, found another guy to suck dry. And me? I thought I'd be happy. I thought freedom would taste sweet. But it didn't. Because I made mistakes too. I spent years letting myself become small. I ignored all the warning signs. I thought if I worked harder, loved harder, forgave harder, it would fix a man who didn't want fixing. And when the time came for revenge, I didn't hold back. I burned everything down. Some of it needed burning. But some of it was just rage. I lost a piece of myself in the fire, too. I started therapy a few months later. Hard work. Ugly work. I learned that sometimes revenge feels good for a moment, but healing feels good for a lifetime. I'm still working on that part. Still trying to rebuild not just my life, but myself. One small piece at a time. And if Mark ever thinks about me, and I know he does, he'll remember that the woman he laughed at, mocked, cheated on, and threw away was the same woman who left him with nothing. Not because I hated him, but because he gave me no choice. Because you can't build a life with a man who treats you like trash. You can only walk away and make sure he never forgets what he lost.